Commission meeting to order for Thursday, April 8th of 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
David Randolph.
Here.
John Brown.
Here.
Scott West.
Here.
Leon Davis. Leon Davis.
Oh, he's frozen.
Commissioner Davis.
Here. Hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, here.
All right, got it. Jeffrey Byer.
Here.
Greg Bowman. Carol Menden.
Here. May I hear a request to approve the minutes from March 4th of 2021?
Just one point of order. I noticed one very minor typo at the end of point 1. None was spelled non under nay at the end of item 1. I'll move to approve the minutes with that change, unless anyone has anything else.
Second.
David Randolph.
Yes.
John Brown.
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
Leon Davis. Leon Davis.
Yes.
Got that one.
Okay.
Jeffrey Byer.
Yes.
Carol Menden.
Yes. First item on the agenda is JZ 21 PUD 61D.MI1, request by Sherry Baldwin for approval of a reduction of the rear build line. The location is at 708 East 126th Street South. Mercy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the same Yorktown rear yard setback that we've discussed already and that I have promised you will see again. This is Beacon Homes as the applicant. They are asking for a reduction. They show you on page 8, it shows the building setbacks, and then on page 9, it kind of goes through the comprehensive plan. And on page 10 of your packet, I showed the actual lot is lot 2, and then you have the plat. So they're basically 10 inches over, and I brought that to you as a minor amendment to the PUD, knowing that I'm going to be working with Beacon Homes and reaching out to the other builders in that area to see how many other encroachments we have so that they're not in a panic when it comes time to sell or purchase, and we can actually have those titles clean and clear. But tonight it's just the one, it's 10 inches over, and staff does recommend approval.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this item? If not, anybody in the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item? And if not, do I hear a motion?
To approve JZ 21D, my number 1. And I'll go ahead and second it.
David Randolph.
Yes.
John Brown.
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
Leon Davis.
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer.
Yes.
Carol Menden.
Yes. Second item is LS 21-355, the request by Lou Reynolds for a lot split. This is at 244 South Gateway Place. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is Gateway Mortgage parking lot. This is part of a already approved PUD amendment. That documentation is here. We have Mr. Reynolds online if you do have any specific questions. They're seeking approval of the lot split for the parking lot to the south. The parent tract is Lot 1, Block 4 was 11.43 acres. Tract A for the parking lot is 0.87 acres, and the remaining tract is 10.86 acres. If you look on page 14, it just kind of gives you the parcel data. There's a little aerial view of the parking lot. If you look on page 15, it's just more pictures. On page 16, it kind of shows you the before and after lot split exhibit. So figure 5 shows the parent tract. And then figure 6 shows the parent tract. I actually got it backwards, sorry. It should say minus the lot split. So on page 17, you're going to see what is currently built, and it's an aerial view before they actually finish the parking lot. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, staff does recommend approval of JL 21-355.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments?
So, Marseille, this is David. They've already constructed that parking lot, and I thought we approved, it already, not the lot split, but
Yes.
So I guess I'm just sort of wondering why are we wanting to do the lot split now? I mean, other than just to carve off the parking lot?
Well,
Correct. So that opens up the other. Go ahead, Lou.
No, go ahead, Marseille, and then I'll follow up.
It allows them to sell that other parcel and gets it that title and that parcel tied to the building, the mortgage company.
Okay.
This is Lou Reynolds for the applicant. In the PUD, when we amended it, we pressed and were approved to split this piece from Lot 1, Block 4, and then we'll tie it to the building because they practically need that parking. And so in effect, it'll become one lot, and that parking lot will become part of the built lot.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. And I've been by there in the mornings, well, anytime really, before that additional parking was constructed, and it really was needed. So I that was a good choice, and thank you for the explanation.
Yes, sir. And we'd respectfully request you approve it as recommended by your staff.
Thank you, Lou. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there a potential buyer then for the parent tract?
Well, that's something I'm just not at liberty to talk about.
That's fine.
But
It was kind of a wild card question.
yes, sir.
Anyone else? Do I hear a motion?
Okay, I guess I asked the question. I'll move to approve JL 21-355 lot split.
And this is John, and I'll second. It's my night for seconds.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Ehrman.
Yes. Item number 3 has been pulled from the agenda, so we won't be discussing that. Is that correct, Marseille?
Yes, Madam Chairman, that is correct.
Okay. Item number 4 is a preliminary final plat request by Jeff Tuttle for approval of a preliminary plat of the cottages of Jenks. This is at 12 West 111th Street and west of St. James Avenue. Okay.
Madam Chairman, this is the project that went through multiple steps to even get here. I kind of outlined them on page 31 of your packet. There were 5 steps. They've gone through 3 of those. They're excited about getting this project off the ground. I will say we were contacted by Mr. Tuttle, who is online, for questions, and if you have any for him. This is coming to you tonight, I said, as preliminary final, but it is my understanding that they're going to move it forward as preliminary due to a couple of the comments that we're working through. There's no reason that I see that we can't approve this as preliminary. It will change very little as we move forward, but I also don't mind bringing it back to you as the final plat. So on page 31, step 1 was the JPWA amendment to the deed of dedication. Step 2 was the minor amendment, future land use map, high intensity single family. That's been done. This property was rezoned, and we did away with specific use permit 23 on this particular portion. And then step 4 is the replat, and then step 5, of course, they're already in the middle of all that, which is the engineering and the building permits. That'll be done in phases. So if you look on page 32, this is literally just a summary of what we've already gone through. Staff comments are found on page 33. I only had a couple of comments. We've worked very closely. We've met with the engineer. We've met with the architect multiple times since the PUD was approved. We've had internal meetings. We've had private meetings. We've met with the fire chief, and this project has had multiple reviews. If you look on page 34, it kind of just is reiterating what was approved in the planned unit development. Page 35 just shows you where it is, which you all remember. It is on the west side of TWG Dover. And page 36, I included kind of a little site plan. It's a little bit hard to see, but and page 37 is also, it's more or less just a site plan for you. Then you get to page 38. Staff and Technical Advisory Committee do recommend approval of the preliminary plat. The comments, I always say that this is not a complete list because there's always that chance that you might think of something, or something may come up in our final meetings. But at this time, there were basically 5 comments, including working with the applicant on the addressing. On page 39, I just had 1 or 2 minor comments. I didn't have anything else at this time. If you, Mr. Tuttle is available if you have very specific questions about this plat.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I'll just have one quick comment. This is David again. I visited with residents in the neighborhood to the north across 111th, and they were very supportive of this development. I know we previously approved this, but they liked the idea of kind of these condominium projects as a buffer between the existing neighborhood to the west and the industrial areas to the east. So, props to the developer for a neat project, and the neighborhood likes it. So, thought I'd mention that.
That's good to hear. Anyone else?
I had one question, and I didn't go back to the last packet we had on this, but on the site drawings that you provided, 37, and I think maybe was it 38? Was it my imagination, or were there originally some enhancements or features in that reserve area for the water retention on the north? Or is it the, yeah? Is it the north?
Are you asking if it has changed from the original site plan?
Yes.
The entrance has changed dramatically. That's the biggest thing that I can say, and Jeff can comment further on that. Originally, there was going to be some houses on the west side of the entrance, or I should say more housing, and they've actually, it's a little bit of a curve, but it's much longer and provides more access for the gated area as well as the excuse me, the clubhouse area. The pond itself has changed in shape because this probably is closer to what is required, or it should be actually what is required for the engine, since the engineering has been done. Did that answer your question, John?
Yeah, I was just thinking, and again, I might have this confused with another project. I was just thinking there might have been some enhancements that were around that reserve area before. Maybe not.
Mr. Tuttle, can you answer Commissioner Brown's question if there were any enhancements that have changed? I know there was a trail that was available to the public, and that's the only thing that I personally remember.
We still have a trail, Marseille, around the pond.
Okay.
And there's a children's playground area in that behind the clubhouse, and there's a patio with a swimming pool. And I don't know that it's going to be for the general public, but it certainly is going to be for these homeowners, or these home dwellers.
Right.
That's what I kind of remembered, that there was just some discussion on that. Just can't necessarily see it on this drawing.
Yes. I'd say, Commissioner Brown, that the actual size and shape of the pond changed a little bit, but the only amenity that I remember at the time of the planned unit development was the trail that was available to the public. Everything else was within the gate and really just dedicated to the occupants of the homes or residents.
Just a quick question, and it looks like an outstanding development. I kind of second David's comments about the neighbors nearby, kind of creating this space between the industrial area and the houses. On the pond, is it detention plus pond? So in other words, it holds water and also serves as detention?
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding that correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay. And it looks like you have a water feature in that detention / pond as well, and I think that's a nice feature.
Right.
Okay, anyone else? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on behalf of this, or any other questions for Jeff? If not, do I hear a motion?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was waiting for the second on it. Okay. Yeah, this is John. So I will make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for the cottages of Jenks. Trying to see if there is a PUD number with it. PUD 122.
Okay, I'll second.
That, of course, would be subject to the remaining items that were listed, 5 items.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer. I did not catch that. Commissioner.
Yes.
How did that time? Carol Minden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the preliminary final plat request by Stephen Hullabow for approval of the preliminary final plats for the Smithco Group, north and south. This is at 9340 South Elwood Avenue West. Marcel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is Stephen Hollabaugh available online at this time? Okay. Well, I will, you all know, and then if you have any questions for him, I can certainly get those to him. So this is basically the summary of the lot split that you saw last month. They brought it to us, and then it was brought to my attention in my research that, great, we can do the lot split, but you're still going to have to plat because it was rezoned in the 80s and rezoning triggers a platting. So that is why they're here tonight. We had a couple of comments on it. Staff and the technical advisory committee both recommend approval. I've been in contact almost every day with Stephen regarding the plat. There was a couple of things that he was getting back to me. It'll be done before council, so I have no problem moving this forward. This is the preliminary final plat for the Smithco Group. It is at 9340 South Elwood West Avenue. It is west of the golf course and north of Main Street. On page 47, you'll see the south plat, and then on 46, you see the north plat. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them since I don't think Stephen is online. Otherwise, this will go to City Council on the 20th.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
So, Marseille, this is David. What is this reads well, and utilities serve both tracks after change, but what's really the purpose behind this?
As far as requiring the plating,
Well, and the changing the 20-foot boundary change, basically. Do you know? This might be a question more for the applicant, but
I may not understand your question, Commissioner Randolph. What are you asking?
well, why do they need to change the lot boundary by 20 foot?
That was just a personal preference. They asked if they could make them equal. And so that required, for some reason, whenever the lots were divvied up in the past, one was wider than the other and they wanted to the same size. They didn't ever say why.
Okay.
Maybe they have the perfect building project and it needs to be that exact size and they can do it twice if it's that exact size. I mean, 20 feet is a row of parking.
Makes sense. Okay. Anyone else? If not, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary final plat for Smithco North and Smithco South per staff comments.
And this is John. I'll second.
I'll second.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Next item is the final plat, a request by Tim Terrell for approval of the final plat of Tory Lakes. This is between 131st Street and 141st Street on Harvard. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For some reason, I'm totally missing that out of my packet here. I can talk about it. This is a preliminary or planned unit development that you've seen in the past. It has been approved. You've approved the preliminary plat. We've gone through all the checks and balances and we've gone, there's one outstanding document and that's a deed of dedication as it turned out for an overland drainage easement. As it turned out, the attorney was in the hospital, so we're still waiting on that. They know that they're not going to get the signatures from city staff until we get it. So we're all good. Staff recommends approval of the Tory Lakes preliminary final plat, or sorry, Tory Lakes final plat.
Got it. Questions or comments?
This is John. I had a question about whether or not the encroachments, possible encroachments on the gas line and easement issues had been resolved.
Yes, so all of the are you talking about the wells on the face of the plat?
Yeah, there was a reference from one
I know
about
what you're talking
an
about.
active gas line.
Yes. Yep. We've gotten letters from the Phillips company they have already sent over the encroachment agreement with One Oak. So everything has been taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I know that Tim is online. If there are any questions for him or Tim, anything that you want to add to it?
Well, I will add that we should have that dock number. The ODE has been, or overland drainage easement has been recorded. As Marseille said, the attorney had a bad fall and really messed up his shoulder, broke it, and was in the hospital for a while. But he mailed it in last week instead of taking it down to record it. So that's why it's taking us longer than we'd expected to get the dock number so we can put it back on the plat. But I've talked to Russell Kozort, and he talked to the attorney this evening, as a matter of fact, and he's going to check on it tomorrow, and we hope to have that dock number tomorrow, and we'll have to go on the plat at that time.
Great. Okay. Anyone else want us to add anything? If not, do I hear a motion?
Commissioner Scott, you're muted, or Commissioner West, you're muted.
I'll make a motion we approve the final plat for Tory Lakes, agenda item number 6.
Second.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Item number 7 is JZ21 PUD 128, request by Select Design for approval of a rezone from agricultural to a residential single-family high-density and a planned unit development. This is going to be south of First Street on West 111th Street. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This item is brought to us by Ryan McCarty with Select Design. I'm going to ask Ryan or Aaron Hill, are either of you online this evening as the applicant?
Ryan is here.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a 3-part request, but we will take action with the rezoning and PUD as one action, and then we will take action on the preliminary plat if you so choose to approve the zoning. So this is a request to rezone from Ag to RS3 and to put a planned unit development over it, which is JZ21 PUD 128. As Councilor or Commissioner Minden said, it is south of 111th and west of Elm. I will say to date, the property owners to the south have reached out to the city. They had several questions and made sure that we understood the direction of the drainage. And I have shared that already with the engineer of record and with the engineering staff. They also said that they had lot split their property previously and had an 11-foot easement around the perimeter, which they did at the time of the lot split. And they were interested in connecting to city sewer and water. And that is also information has already been passed on to city staff and the engineer of record. So there were no significant questions by them. We also had a phone call, and Brendan can chime in if I miss anything. We had a phone call from someone else about the property to the west and if those houses were in fact abandoned. And then we had one other phone call. Brandon, do you remember what that one was?
You already talked about the ones to the south.
Yes.
Then I cannot remember.
Okay. There was one other one.
Right.
They did.
It was the gentleman to the east of the property. He just wanted to know what was being put there.
Okay.
He was fine with the project.
That's right. Yeah. So once he talked to Brandon, I did not talk to him. Once he had an understanding of the project, he had no further questions. So if you look at page 55, what you see is PUD 128 and with an RS3 zoning underneath. We have TAC comments from March 23rd. This was one of our own, we had an online TAC conversation, as you can see in all of the notes. Winoak was very much present and had a lot of comments on everything. So the applicants are working directly with them. And then, of course, I'll be following up and expect release letters for all of that. This is in City Council Ward number 6. The current zoning is Ag. There are primarily 2 parcels involved. It's in section township range 36-1812. The comprehensive plan does allow for medium intensity single family. If you are looking through the PUD, you will note that they are not they're not near the maximum density that they would be allowed for medium intensity or RS3. Currently, it is unplatted. The site is 13.57 acres. It is not in any part of the appearance district. This says no public comment at the time of the report, which was accurate, but as I stated, we had 3 calls since then. The PUD data states they have a goal to protect the natural trees as much as possible. That they will have a landscaped entry features, including masonry stucco screening walls with stone columns and Hackett beam rock walls. How many of you Googled that after you got the staff report? Just me, huh? Maybe Jeffrey and all you knew what it was, but if you've been to the gathering place and saw those large hewn rocks that look like petrified wooden beams, that's kind of what it is. Of course, they'll be planting new trees, and they'll have dedicated seating areas. They don't want to have to deal with the USACE or Section 404, but they will work with them, but they are trying to preserve, I guess is my point. They're trying to preserve everything that would have to do with that, and so that they don't have to do anything extra. Therefore, they planned it kind of around that. And I'll let Ryan talk about that if he needs to. Detention is going to be considered passive recreation. They have 2 acres of green space. If you look on page 57, I did my normal chart, which shows it's straight out of the code. It shows if you were doing an RS1 straight zoning, what that would look like. RS2 straight zoning, what that would look like. PUD 128, and then PUD, RS3. So this one is between RS2 and RS3, but it is certainly closer to RS3, which I promised is a goal of mine to always have the PUD match as close to the zoning as possible. The land area, though, lot width is closer to RS3, but the lot area is very close to RS2, which is nice. So they're narrow, long lots that, speaking from the city planner position, that's nice because people want a pool. If you're not in the pool business, you have missed a great opportunity, because that's all we do these days are sign building permits for pools.
Wow.
So the structure did not change. Livability space, I'll let, they just basically said that they have 2 acres of green space. Everything else is very, very, very close. The rear yard setback is 20 feet, which gives them a little bit more room to build in case they want a little larger house. This is, I'll let Ryan talk about the developer if he wants to. On page 58, there's a site map that kind of shows you the general area. It's an L-shaped item. We've had a lot of conversations with the fire chief, and Ryan has worked really hard to meet all the requirements that the fire chief has laid out. Let's see, page 59, I put a big star. It's kind of not real obvious, but anyway, we're on the comprehensive plan there. It says the estates at Ritz Hollow brings a small subdivision in an area predominantly undeveloped. Staff has met with a consultant. The details of the street connection to Elgin will need improvement, and that's where there's been a lot of conversation. If you look on page 60, it's the general PUD zoning language, and you all, Commissioner Beyer is probably very familiar with it, having been on the other side, but it's just standard language straight from the city code. Then I have staff comments. Continue to work with city staff on connection to Elgin. Sidewalks are required internally and along street frontage. Keep staff updated as you move through design and the 404 process. Update the comprehensive plan information, which has already been done, I believe, and add PUD 128. Oops, sorry, that's not 128. Should say 128. Correct all outstanding PUD markups. Let's see. On page 61 starts the actual PUD exhibit. And a lot of this information we just went over. I put it in the staff report, just in a different format. So if you look on page 64, it shows the topography and existing soils in that exhibit. Amenities are found on page 65. There's a pond with fountains and aerators. They'll have sitting areas with benches, trees, professional landscaping, a natural stream channel with native vegetative preservation area, and more than 2 acres of green space. On page 67 is the site plan layout, which does match the plat. One of the questions that I got from the public, I forgot I had one other one, and that was on the distance of the gate. And I spoke with the applicant, Mr. McCarty, and they use Broken Arrow's private gated subdivision language. I'm going to forward it to you all so that we can have that note and conversation during the UDO process, because I think it is really well written. And Mr. McCarty said that is the only thing that they use in designing subdivisions. And so I think it gives you like 60 feet versus the 40 that we've looked at before. So page 69 is a site plan. Page 70 is the actual exhibit that we sent out as the legal note in the legal notice. On page 71 is the preliminary plat, and it might be backwards, but anyway, you see the preliminary plat and then the engineering details. I don't have any further questions. Technical Advisory Committee and city staff do recommend approval of this project. And I'm not sure, without asking Brandon, is the couple in the chambers here for this project or a different project?
This project.
Okay, so we do have two people in the audience that may or may not choose to speak on this.
Okay,
That is all I have for you.
thank you. Any questions or comments?
This is John. I have a couple minor questions for Marseille. First of all, some feedback here. The details provided on page 63 that noted the exceptions, that was very beneficial. Going back to the comparison that you did on page 57 for the standards, that was helpful. So I appreciate that. Question one was regarding the Clean Water Act 404. Was that because of existing water features? Is it wetland identified up there, or was it going to do with drainage and runoff? And then the second question was a reference that you had about updating the comp plan. Was this simply because this is going to be a PUD?
The comprehensive plan, originally, Mr. McCarty had the old comprehensive plan as an exhibit. And so that was it. It was the right information, or it just wasn't the right picture. So that was just asking him to update that. As far as the 404, I believe it was a blue line, but I'll let Ryan speak on behalf of that. I just know that they were not willing to really touch it too much. So they were doing everything they could to protect it.
You're absolutely right, Marseille. It is an identified blue line on USGS maps. So we have to go do a wetlands delineation study and work directly with the Corps to make sure, A, that it is actually where you say it is, and B, try to avoid it in all likelihood. So either way, we'll have to work with the city engineer and staff to prove that basically it's a letter, a jurisdictional determination letter from the Corps stating that we are in compliance with the 404.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Yeah, this is Scott. I had a question for Marseille, a couple of them actually. I heard you say that you worked pretty extensively with the fire chief on the design of this. I had a question about the cul-de-sac in the back. Is that a larger radius than what is traditionally used? Or is that okay by the fire chief?
It is, I believe, the standard that he requires, and it was acceptable to him. The biggest thing that we've talked about is getting that second access going west and connecting to Elgin. And, at first we didn't know, no one really knew the condition of Elgin and wasn't sure. So there was that question. And then also, how far does the developer have to go and what does he have to do to get to Elgin? So that's been the ongoing conversation. So that is it is a gated community with private streets. So they will have a gate there that would be used for emergency access only, but they are required to connect to Elgin with a road or paving surface suitable for the fire chief, or which he would not. Okay. It's not the fire chief; it's the fire code.
So it'll be connected like a stub street, but it will remain gated. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
And then my second comment was on, I'm anxious to get the language from Broken Arrow about the stacking and the distance from the gate. I know we've talked in the past that we had enough stacking for a truck and trailer or 2 cars from the gate, but from the keypad, maybe there was only room for 1 car. So if somebody comes in, doesn't know the number that they're going to call, they have to look it up. That stacks up really quickly. And we've talked about maybe addressing that and making the distance from the roadway more pertinent to where the keypad is as opposed to where the gate is.
Ryan, would you like to elaborate on that design?
Yes, I do believe, the keypad is the important part because that's where you're going to stop. So I think, I don't have it in front of me at the moment, I apologize, but I do believe Broken Arrow's code says 60 feet from the curb line to the keypad. So that's a pretty substantial distance. So the gates are normally set back about 85 to 100 feet, depending on the design. But we can definitely work with city engineer and fire department, whoever, to make sure we get that geometry right.
Great. That sounds far more substantial to what we've done in the past. So that sounds good.
Okay.
I'm sure that we originally thought of it about 10 years ago, and Broken Arrow just took it from us. We're just remembering it now.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, this is David. Marseille, that chart, showing the differences with the RS2 and RS3 is very helpful. And the big point of a PUD is to provide benefits or amenities for residents. And I really like the, things like that, I don't want to say it's a park, but the green area at the end by the cul-de-sac, I think that's a real benefit for residents. So, that this is the type of project I like to see. I've also compliment the developer on keeping mature trees. Sometimes new projects wipe everything out and it takes some time to grow back. So, I hope for future projects, developers will have more, to the extent possible, keep mature trees. I think that's a good thing. Then kind of one last comment, and I was going to ask about stacking, but I think we've already answered that, and that distance sounds acceptable to me. There's also a question about lighting. I didn't know, this may be too early to address now, but is there any lighting planned for that area by the entrance, by stacking? But where the stacking would take place, just.
There will be, this is Ryan, there will be some lighting supplied there. We haven't got to that point yet on the actual design, but we'll definitely want some lighting there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay. At this point, I'll open up to the floor. There, audience members, if either of you would like to come forward and ask any questions or state your concerns or support for this agenda item, you're welcome to come up and tell us if you give us your name and address.
I think they have no comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ryan, anything else that you want to add?
No. Thank you, Marseille, for that thorough staff report. You made my job a lot easier.
It's very good. She's very good at that. Okay, I'll close the floor. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, this is John. Again, great job to the developer on this. I make a motion we approve JZ 21 PUD 128 with the additional rezoning from AG to RS3.
This is David. I'll second.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Next part of this agenda, of the last of PUD 128, is a preliminary plat. Request by Select Design for approval of a preliminary plat for the estates at Ritz Hollow. This is south of First Street on West 111th. Marseille.
Thank you, Chairman. I do not have any additional comments. This is the same exact project that you've seen. It is the preliminary plat reflects what you've seen in the PUD and in the site plan.
Okay. Any additional comments from commissioners? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll just say I'm really excited about the pickleball court that's mentioned.
Do I hear a motion?
This is David. I move to approve JZ 21 PUD 116. MI1 minor amendment. Oh, go ahead. What?
We're at
not
number
on
8.
116.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on the second part of PUD 128.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll just say staff and the technical advisory committee recommend approval of the preliminary plat for Estates at Ritz Hollow.
Did we have a second?
We haven't had a first. I'll make the motion that we approved agenda item number 8, preliminary plat of Estates of Ritz Hollow.
This is
Second.
Jeff Meyer. I second. Oh, go ahead, John.
Let Jeff have it.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
David Byer,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Next item is JZ 21 PUD 116.MI1, request by Robert Bell for approval of a minor amendment to PUD 116. This is at the northwest corner of 131st and Harvard. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a project you all have previously approved. It known as PUD 116 Fraser Meadows. The applicant was underway with the preliminary plat. They've started their dirt work. When the engineering came in for staff to review, we observed. So let me just state that I was not present during the PUD approval, nor was our current city engineer, Mr. Cloyd, and Mr. Cloyd and staff agreed that having the streets over a high pressured gas line and other utilities was not in the best interest. And so we met. It was a several meetings. Mr. Bell was present, the developer was present, and eventually we got to an agreement, and part of that, they agreed to move the streets and we agreed to allow them to have some lots in a position that you probably wouldn't normally see. They're at the end of a stub out, not necessarily a cul-de-sac. The fire chief has reviewed it and is acceptable, finds the layout acceptable. Staff is in favor of the changes. The technical advisory committee had similar requirements. So all of this is along that One Oak gas line, and they are requesting an encroachment agreement as well, the same as Tory Lakes. So we had a few technical advisory comments, but for overall, the minor amendment is, let me just go through this. At the bottom of page 73, which is page 1 of the staff report, there are 2 requests. Recommendation of approval of PUD 116 minor amendment. And I will tell you that I brought it to you as a minor amendment because there are no other, nothing's been built yet. So there's no need to identify or tell the neighbors that we're moving a street. So it is, in one sense, a significant change, but it's a very significant change that was really necessary. So I still felt like it was fine to move it forward as a minor amendment. So there was no public notice. So it's approved realignment of 130th Street and change of lot alignment in block 4, which would allow for smaller lot widths and allow for alternate street design for small stub out streets, and the redesign of 128th Street to accommodate lot 11 block 8 and to accommodate Future development to the north. So there's a second item on the agenda tonight called Fraser Falls, and approval of this has nothing to do with approval of Fraser Falls, except that I'm just going to tell you up front, if Fraser Falls is approved, it will change the sanitary sewer, I believe. So anyway, it doesn't affect this portion. Recommendation, staff is asking for recommendation of the minor amendment to the PUD and approval of the final plat. So as you can see, we had some staff comments from March 23rd, and then we had some staff comments. So there's one thing I want to bring up and discuss with you. Mr. Bell and I are not in agreement, and I told him that I would take it under consideration, but ultimately, I don't disagree with him. I've done some research, but I'm going to leave it up to the Planning Commission to decide. And the thing that we don't agree on is, as you know, we've had multiple issues with Yorktown because the rear yard setback is not included on the face of the plat. I did some research, and about 1 in 10 plats it's included. So is it standard to include it? No, it's really not. Is it uncommon? No, it is common. We have multiple plats around the city that do include the rear yard setback. It makes it easier for developers. It makes it easier for staff to make sure that when they set that plot plan out for that new structure, that they're not encroaching anything. So my comment had been add the rear build lines to the face of the plat, and Mr. Bell argued that that was not wise. I understand why he said it wasn't wise. Again, I'm going to let you all debate it, and you can decide if you want the rear yard lines on there. So Mr. Bell's argument was that it can be confusing because if you're allowed to have an accessory structure, but you say nothing can encroach the rear yard build line, then you have to add extra language to the deed of dedication, and that can be confusing to people. So I want you to know I'm perfectly comfortable if you say it is not necessary to put the rear yard build line on there. But and that would be in agreement with how Mr. Bell feels. I feel like it should be. And there's not a right or wrong. It's just going to boil down to what is your preference. And if you choose not to, then I will try to make sure that when the building inspectors are looking at these building permits, that we are very cautious to look at all the setbacks and not just the front yard setback. So with that being said, on page 75, it kind of talks about the original comments from PUD 116. Let's see. It is in Ward 3. Currently, there are 100 lots in 8 blocks. You look on page 77. Originally, and this may have been corrected, I can't remember, there was a missing street name on between block 3 and 4. And again, you're going to see my comment, add rear build lines to face a plat, add limits of no access to plat for street at northeast corner. Correct the number of reserves and number of lots, which I believe everything was done that I requested except for the rear build lines, and I'm leaving that up to you. Staff has 2 recommendations or 2 actions on Fraser Meadows. 1, staff and technical advisory committee recommend conditional approval of the final plat of Fraser Meadows, and that is I still have to make sure I get all of my release letters from my utility companies, etc. But as long as they do everything that we've asked and that City Council has asked, I'm more than happy to move this forward. And staff does recommend approval of minor amendment to PUD 116, which allows for the realignment and size of lots and streets. And I think that is it. If you look on page 78, there is 1 page of text talking about basically what I just summarized. And then on page 79 is the new plat. Do you have any questions for me?
I just have a quick comment and just want to acknowledge the city and the developer working to move the streets and address that issue after things have been put into motion. I think that's significant and worthy of recognition.
Well, it was definitely teamwork, and we couldn't have done it without the cooperation of the developer and the applicant. That was very important as well. So thank you, though.
Other questions and comments?
So, Marseille, on the rear setback,
Yes, sir.
you summed up the argument well, but I mean, tell me if I'm missing anything. It seems to make sense to include it, as I think you're recommending. I mean, I guess Mr. Bell suggested that it might be confusing if there's an accessory structure that might not violate that rear setback, but it kind of goes back to our other. I'm just wanting to not cause problems later and more clearly delineate the setbacks and not have structures built in the wrong spot. It seems like that would help with that problem, wouldn't it? Or I'm open to your thoughts. You know, what do you think about that? I mean, it seems more helpful than not to me, but do you agree?
There's one thing, it does make the plat a little more tedious to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But it also provides information at a quick glance that otherwise you're going to have to either know, because as a city staff or building inspector or something like that, you're going to have to know. But usually they keep a cheat sheet that they go through. I don't know. It's probably unfortunate that we've had this humongous issue with Yorktown, so it makes it even more pressing on my mind. I probably wouldn't even have thought of it honestly otherwise, but because of Yorktown, it's very much on my mind. And like I said, I just don't, I feel strongly that it should be on there. And 1 in 10 plots that I looked at Tulsa County as well. And it is about 1 in 10. So that's not a huge amount that present their final plats that way. So I understand, and I'm fine if you all choose not to. Should it, as the city planner, I will be much more cognizant when I'm signing building permits that the building inspectors have already looked at. They basically write them up and present them and give them to me, and I pretty well am making an assumption that they've noticed everything, but you know, they're not perfect. But this one just happened to be Yorktown, just kind of really got me to thinking, let's maybe do a little bit more. But we don't put side yards in. I'm not asking them to do the side yards. So Commissioner Randolph, I'm fine with either direction that you go.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess my preference would be to include it, but I'm curious to hear from the rest of the commission.
I would kind of voice in there with Commissioner Randolph as well that I was thinking the same thing when we went through the original issue of the encroachment earlier, of not having to go back later and clean these up. Do we have our setbacks codified elsewhere to where they don't need to be included specifically in each plat?
Generally speaking, the deed of dedication should be reflecting what was approved and codified in the PUD. And so it's usually as simple as looking at page 2 of the plat or page 3 of the plat. And I will say probably 99%. I mean, we do hundreds and hundreds of building permits, and it generally is always caught. I don't know what happens on Yorktown. It seems like someone might have just really thought it was something that it wasn't. Like maybe they really thought it was 20 feet and it was always 25. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe one Yorktown phase was one. Maybe Yorktown phase 3 was 25 and they didn't know it changed for phase 4. I don't know. I can't explain why we're having this issue. So
this could,
that was where
again, it could vary from one PUD to the next versus a standard language in the ordinance.
PUD.
Yeah.
No, it is in the city code, but we don't go by the code. We go by the PUD.
Okay. More confusion. Anyone else?
I may be confused a little bit on the setback. So if the planning commission recommends approval for adding on this PUD, would that be the standard moving forward for all other developments that we would ask that it be put on the face of the PUD? So are we then establishing a new standard is my question.
I believe that by having a conversation tonight and stating that we like this, we prefer this, that is the direction I will recommend when we're going through the UDO process. And at that time, you can decide, yes, we want it in our subdivision regs. Because, you know, I have a list that I go through. This is what you got to do. And this is the check. And so it does require it on the preliminary plat. I will say that. So if you go through the subdivision regulations and the city code, you have to include all build lines on the preliminary plat. But on the final plat, they usually just have you to do the front build line setback.
Is the
It doesn't
complexity?
say that.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's a little bit ambiguous. It doesn't really spell it out and say specifically.
So on the complexity of adding it, is it simply from the drawings where it's illustrated versus having it within the language?
Correct. So
Okay.
you're adding another line to that lot. So you're going to have that rear utility 17.5, generally speaking, plus you're going to have a 20-foot build line or 25-foot build line or whatever at the rear.
So again, if we were looking at both the side lots and the rear, and you're not really looking at the side lots right now, but that could become an issue on how close homes are constructed.
Yeah. It could, but I wouldn't. At this point, I would not recommend that for final plats. It's probably too many lines on the face of the plat, because you'd have the lot line, and then if you got a 5-foot and a 5-foot, that would be really hard to distinguish on a plat.
Yeah, like I said, I'd like to not have encroachments that we have to address in the future. But if we go into an overuse situation, is that going to complicate things for the inspectors as they're going out? What would they prefer to see? Will it make it easier for them?
Well, the first thing they look at generally is the plot plan, and the builder normally draws in all the building setbacks. And then the next thing they're going to look at, if they're not sure, if they don't know that, like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably the first 10 or so in that subdivision, they're not going to remember what the setbacks are. So they probably have a cheat sheet, but after a while they remember, you know, they're probably not going to have to look at it. So if they can just look quickly at the face of the plat, great. It kind of goes to, do you want addresses on the face? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of nuances that aren't required. And sometimes some people prefer that they're not there because it jumbles up the plat and makes it harder to read. Other people prefer it so that they don't have to look through multiple pages.
Right.
And like I said, it's not a big deal. I don't think you're setting a precedent, but it's something, however you want to move forward tonight, we'll bring it up and have a bigger conversation at the UDO level.
Okay. That makes sense. Everyone clear as mud on all that?
Sorry.
All right. No, it's good to know. It just makes sense that it should be there. It's just more consistency, and it sounds like it would make everyone's job just a little bit easier.
Except the developer on the front end.
Well, yeah, get the hard work over first so it goes through faster.
Yeah.
Is the applicant in the audience?
I am here
There
on the
it is.
phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you wish to add?
I absolutely would, and I'll be quick. First off, thank you for recognizing that the developer went overboard to accommodate the request by the engineer, especially in our late design. And we're still moving dirt. The whole purpose of the kind of the redesign and the short roadways that kind of go to the south there is different, and we wanted to also put that onto the minor amendment. Recognize, I think those are kind of like a College Park streets, and those have been approved by the engineer and the fire chief, and that was a major problem, and we recognized the problem with the Glenpool sewer line and the water line that was under the street and moving all that. So, and I agree that the developer went overboard to try to accommodate everybody also. That is why we
added the lots on the south side of that street into the phase one of the final plat. Of course, we had the final plat approved, and we're bringing it back in because of those major changes. But the addition of those lots in that area allows us to pay for the things and the changes that were requested of us and that we had to do at that point. So I would note that the access road on the north end of this subdivision from Harvard Avenue is in question. It's necessary right now because of the distance to the cul-de-sac. If the next subdivision is approved and goes in, that access is not necessary and would be better, I think, for that roadway not to have it. And therefore, you'll see in the next plat or the next PUD approval, we took that roadway out and made a lot out of it. And so that'll change and recognize that the conditional approval needs to also recognize that as a lot. And we've talked to the fire chief about the distances, and that was brought up at the TAC meeting. As far as the setback goes, I'm not falling on my sword here by any means. There's a couple things that I think is important in that relationship is that the setbacks, the rear setbacks, the side setbacks, and the front building line is all established in the zoning code. Therefore, any modification of that has to be listed into the PUD and that's why it's listed in the DOD document itself. Customarily, people look at the building line differently than the setbacks, and there's a reason for that. Is that the building line, you can't put any structure in front of that. In the back setback line, which is either 20 or 25 feet, you can put an accessory building on the other side. I think you establish a line on a plat and call it a building line. You don't put the side setbacks on there at the same time. You create, and I heard that we're only creating some difficulties for the developer up front, but I think you're creating some questions for the title company and mortgage surveys when buildings show up on the other side of a building line and they want some documentation in regards to that building is okay and it's not not in compliance with the plat. So you run into that problem at that point. I also said, if you're going to put the rear building line on there, what's wrong? I mean, where we stop? The side yard line. I think for 100 years, building inspectors know that there's and our codes people know that and developers know that there's a building line out there in the back, and so all we're doing is adding confusion to what's existing. And I heard Marseille, and I know what Marseille's trying to do. She's trying to stop a problem that's come up in Yorktown, but Yorktown's the only place that we've had this problem, and that sounds like a builder problem. And I think you're punishing and you're causing some confusion and directing a problem related to. It sounds like one builder or two builders need to be trained a little better to make sure that they don't violate that building line in the back. And I could almost guess who the builder is because we had that same problem with the builder in the past in other developments. And we've done variants to those building lines. And it's usually side set yards or front yards and sometimes backyard. I mean, it's all four lines at that point is where in the past that problem's come up. So I just don't know that we're solving a problem by having that on the plat. I think that creates other problems and systematically that Everybody knows that there's a rear building line or building setback in the backyard. It's not a building line. It's associated with the main house. And if you put that line on the plat, I think you also have to expand on that in the DODs to describe, to alleviate the problem with some title attorney saying, oh, that there's a building on the other side of that building line. That's in violation. I need a letter from the city at that point. So that's my thoughts. So I appreciate your support on the PUD amendment and also on the final plat. As we said, we had the preliminary and final approved, but there's been such a major change with trying to get the street from over those two lines underground that we needed to bring it back to you and let you see what was going on.
Robert, quick question on when you redesigned the roadways and everything, did it add or subtract any houses from the development?
We lost houses. We lost 3 houses overall in phase 1. Now I added 12 back in phase 1, but phase 2 lost houses at that point. So.
Wait, you lost 3, but you gained 12?
No.
What heard you say?
Yeah, but I gained 12 in phase 1, but then I still lose 3 in phase 2. In relationship, I lose 15 in phase 2. You follow me?
No.
Yeah.
You kind of contradicted me, I thought this is phase 1 that we're looking at, right?
Yes, but the overall development loses lots because of the reconfiguration of the roads.
Okay. 15, you said, right? Total.
No, 3.
Total. Okay, so total in all this reconstruction for phase 1 and phase 2, you lost 3 houses.
That's
right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. That's $180,000.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, do we hear a motion for the minor amendment?
This is Scott. I think I would probably agree with Mr. Bell's side of not adding more lines onto these plats. I mean, I have to get out my surgical loops to try and read the things to start with, and you add extra lines for every single lot. Yeah, the competent builders know what they're doing. They know how to look that up. I would be opposed to putting that on there.
Okay.
Was that a motion then on approval?
No, that was just a comment.
Just a comment? Okay.
This is David. I'll just, as another comment, echo Commissioner West. I as long as it's clear somehow, yeah, it could junk up the plat a little bit more. So I'm okay leaving it off, thinking about it more.
Yeah, I think I at this point would not want to necessarily change the rules of engagement and take up the subject as we go deeper in the UDO and give us some time to really think it through.
Okay, so you can make someone can make a motion and include that in there as a condition or not a condition.
Okay, this is David. I'll go ahead and move to approve JZ 21 PUD 116 minor amendment. 1 with staff comments, but excluding to add rear build lines to the face of the plat.
Got it.
And that includes the recommendation of the approval of the final plat.
Yes.
Next one.
Or, oh, sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, separate then. I'll give you a second on that one.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Harold Minden.
Yes. Okay, the next one is for the final plat, the request by Robert Bell for approval of the final plat for Fraser Meadows. We've discussed on this already. Do I hear a motion? Unless there's more discussion.
This is David. So moved.
This is John, second.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Harold Minden.
Yes. Okay. I think that the last item on the agenda, the next item on the agenda is for the final, no, that one, never mind, okay. Last item on the agenda is JZ 21 PUD 127, the request by Robert Bell for approval of the planned unit development and a zone change from agricultural to residential single-family medium density at the south corner of East 106th Street South and South Harvard. Marseille?
Thank you, Commissioner Minden. This is directly north of Fraser Meadows, the project we just spoke about. And it's Plan Unit Development 127. So there would be a rezoning. If approved, it's a rezoning from Ag to RS2 and the approval of Planned Unit Development 127. So we had a technical advisory committee on March 23rd with several comments. Says Mr. Bell represents the owner and gave a brief description of the project. There are 3 aesthetic ponds and 1 detention pond to the west. There will be a lift station on the northwest corner of the lot, and emergency access will be on the north. TEP will be the engineer of record. If Fraser Falls is approved and purchased, it will allow for access through Fraser Meadows and take the Harvard access from Fraser Meadow and allow the space to be a lot. So that's what Mr. Bell was talking about when he was talking about the access on Fraser Meadows. There was an access that leads out to Harvard that was on the northeast corner. So if Fraser Falls is approved and the platting is approved in the future, then that lot would be replatted with Fraser Falls. That access goes away. The access near lot 11 gives Fraser Falls will have access to the south through Fraser Meadows, but it will be private and gated, and Fraser Meadows will not be allowed to go north, if all of that makes sense. So again, we had comments from One Oak about an encroachment agreement. Staff is pursuing a conversation with them to confirm that we can do sidewalks on the outside. If not, then I'm going to be requesting a trail because we want to be able to have safe access along our arterials and secondary arterials, etc. The staff comments, there was a street name missing. I did say add the, we're going to erase that. Let me go back over here. On page 84, you're going to see the little chart that I did. So they're asking for RS2. I don't know why this one's hard for me. RS2, but you see here, they're between RS2 and RS3 in their lot width because they're asking for 60 to 63 feet. Lot area, they have an average of 72,000 square feet. RS3 is a little bit smaller. RS2 is a little bit larger. Livability space, 3,500. Their setbacks are very similar to RS3. The minimum house size is 2,200 square feet with masonry 100% on the first floor. Up at the top, it does say that the maximum number of homes would be 130, but currently there are 109 planned, and the average is 60 to 120 feet lots. So 60 feet wide is the average and 120 feet in depth. There are several, inches. There are several that are 63 feet. The starting price for these homes is estimated to begin at about $350,000. There will be 2 gated access points. The primary one would be Harvard, and the secondary would be that street that I just spoke to you about, East 126th Street. There'll be perimeter screening. One of the things that Mr. Bell mentioned is he is very concerned about safety, and I know I've spoken with Commissioner Minden. She's also will speak on this, very concerned about safety. There's a curve along 126. The developer feels that that needs to be a priority and clear the vegetation immediately if this parcel is purchased, and they'll be dedicating additional street right-of-way on that hard corner. This is not part of this Fraser Falls, but staff is hoping that the opposite corner there along that curve, the gentleman there has been willing to talk to us about dedicating some additional right-of-way. So hopefully we'll get, when and if this corner develops, whether it's through Fraser Falls or something else, hopefully we'll get that area cleaned up and that curb improved so that it's safer. If approved, it would, Mr. Bell would submit a revised sewer plan and relocate the second lift station from Fraser Meadows to Fraser Falls. And there would be an extension of a 12-inch water line along Harvard that will connect with the 8-inch. If you look at the zoning in that area, to the north is RS1, to the Fraser Meadows is RS2. You have RS1 on the west, and you still have some ag. So on page 86, you see the exhibit presented here. It kind of makes a square, and then you've got the ponds going diagonally across there. This is also where there's some natural water flow, and they're trying to work with the natural vegetation and the flow of water, similar to what Ritz Hollow kind of talked about. Fraser Falls is part of the Fraser subdivision legacy. The development will create the opportunity to possibly solve some of these traffic concerns along the curve, and with the immediate clearing of the brush and providing sidewalks. And as I mentioned, it may actually end up being trails, but there will be, hopefully we'll get the encroachment agreement with One Oak and they will allow us to do sidewalks. If not, maybe we're hoping a minimum, and it just depends on the location. So it is required, with the exception that there might be something that prevents us because of One Oak. If you look on page 88, staff comments, staff and technical advisory committee do recommend approval of the Fraser Falls request to rezone from ag to RS2 and add a planned unit development 127 overlay. Then on page 90 of your staff report starts the actual PUD submitted by Mr. Bell on behalf of the developer. Has some photos in there, has the development area lot requirements, development area A. You can see here on page 97 all that vegetative area. That's where that water drains to, and that's where they're working to keep that space dedicated for drainage and created an actual amenity and feature. On page 99, you're going to see a sketch. The little circles on the actual exhibit, I don't know if you can see it, it's not real clear, but those are the 63-foot lots. If it doesn't have a circle in the lot, it's a 60-foot lot. I think that is it. They at the time of submittal, and he may have corrected it already, I can't remember, Mr. Bell can state if he has, Exhibit E needed to be updated. Staff and technical advisory committee have reviewed it. We know there are challenges with the drainage, and definitely the platting is gonna help out Fraser Meadows by relocating that lift station. They are extending the water line, but that is all. Those are all the comments that I have at this time, and we do recommend approval.
Okay. So before I turn it over to and open the floor like I normally would, I live in this area directly, so I'm very knowledgeable and very well aware of the situation that's in there. If you look at the very last page, which is where the neighbors get their notice from the city about how everything goes, the corner that we're talking about that goes from 126th Street over to Harvard is one of three very sharp corners that goes from Harvard north to South Florence to 121st Street. So there's traffic is a big deal down here. That's a 2-lane asphalt road with no shoulders and a number of areas that have, most of it is drop off from the street, from the asphalt right down into a ditch or a ditch pretty much in most areas. And right now there is greenery that covers that corner. And what they're talking about taking that greenery down by putting houses up and putting buildings in that area with fences, it's going to totally block the view of that corner, making it more dangerous than it is now, in my opinion, because right now people can see headlights when it's dark, and when it's light, you can still kind of see if there's traffic coming. It's an extremely sharp corner. Trucks, semis come down this way, and lots of trucks have gone off the road into ditches in that area. So it's a big concern of how that's going to, I can't see how it's ever going to be made safe because there's so much traffic that goes down there. And since we're adding, since they're wanting to add 100 homes in this division and another 100 homes in Fraser Meadows, that's another 200 homes with another 400 potential cars that are going to go down that already heavily trafficked road, making it even more scarier, not just on that corner, but the next sharp corner is right where I live. And then there's another one down past the water treatment plant. The other thing on 126th Street, because drainage is an issue, when it rains heavily, that water goes from the street towards the west and kind of flows downwards, because along all those homes on South Florence, there's a creek that runs through every one of the front of our properties. And when it rains really hard and heavy, it floods, and it floods. You can't get out of your driveway. And I know my neighbors are working in hospitals, and so they have to get to work, but it's a scary scenario when there's so much rain coming down there that it floods over and nobody can get by. So that's another little minor deal to have to work with. So I really, and I guess the last thing when we talk about fitting into a neighborhood, the neighborhood that I live in is everyone's got at least like 2.5 acres. And then the ag area has homes and they probably got a nice 10 acres. And I see this development coming in all along, and we keep crowding houses one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another one. And in this zoning, the way that it's going, to be zoned for an RS2 when it feels more like it should be zoned as an RS3 with the parameters given, it's just, it would have been nice to see them use this land by giving people like a half an acre or an acre of land and be able to build something like that. I think it would blend with the neighborhood a whole lot more. So I have some serious concerns with this whole project. And with that said, I will now ask the commissioners for their questions or comments.
I'd kind of like to weigh in behind you, Carol. Are those you mentioned South Florence, are those bar ditches down there? Where were you talking about the water moving across? Are they using bar ditches?
I don't understand.
On South Florence, we were talking about the water when it rains.
Oh, there's like in my driveway, it goes down a hill, the creek goes under this little makeshift bridge. So it's kind of like a little makeshift bridge that everybody has. Okay. And they're all concreted, but they all flood.
I don't get down there very often. Let me jump in with a comment, and I know I've raised this in past meetings when it comes to the side yards on minimum distance. We've got, on this particular proposal, we've got 2 5-foot side yards, and I'm hearing Randy Ewing screaming in the back of my head, going back to the early days of leadership. And if you've got 2 5-foot side yards and a privacy fence between houses, and somebody's got a plumbing issue that comes up in the back of the house, depending on where utilities are at, then to get to that with a backhoe, you're going to have to tear a mutual fence down and get into somebody else's property. So I really have a problem with houses being, especially when you're talking about a $350,000 house with 5 feet on each side. It just seems like it's really cramped. And I know I've raised this issue in the past of whether or not that's good practice.
Good point. Anyone else?
So just a question for Marseille and the Technical Advisory Committee. They originally had 2 lift stations serving each potential neighborhood that we've discussed, and now they're down to 1 lift station that serves both the Falls and the other Fraser development. Is that correct? That lift station serves both of them?
No, it would be originally, as it is right now, Fraser Meadows will have 2 lift stations. If Fraser Falls gets approved, 1 lift station is taken out of Fraser Meadows and put in Fraser Falls.
That's
So there
not
would be
correct.
1 each. Oh, did I say it wrong, Robert?
Yeah.
It just goes, 1 goes away and it goes to Fraser Falls. Is that correct?
With permission, I'll answer the question.
Thank you.
Originally, the sewer study for that area identified a lift station to be put at the site where it's shown at in the Falls development and the development that we're processing right now. That property was not available, and when the Meadows development was approved, and originally we thought that we would do a temporary lift station in Meadows, and then when this actually got built, then we would connect Meadows to the new lift station where the area would have 1. Now that lift station not only serves this property, not only serves the Meadows property, but serves the 80 acres that is vacant to the east, and is also going to be the tie-in for the current subdivision up on the hill that the sewer study identifies. And so that lift station has to be built to serve about 120 acres at that point. With that understanding, when we process the Meadows plat, the city engineer working with DEQ wanted that not to be a temporary. They said this has to be firmed, and I told them, I said, then you will be requiring 2 lift stations in the area. And they said, yes, we understand that and we accept that. I along with the city engineer, didn't like that. It needs to just be 1, just for the cost to the city at that point. So with the approval of this development, we go back to the original design, and we're able to get rid of the lift station that is in Meadows, and put in the one that the city sewer study provides, that serves the entire area, which is this location. So that's the answer.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So on this dangerous curve, and I have driven that too, and it is extremely sharp. You know, I see the notch, assuming I'm looking at this right, in the northeast corner of the development here, but where Florence and 126th go. You know, this is kind of an open question, maybe Marseille. You know, what can be done to engineer that better? I mean, this seems like the time to get it right.
Right.
Yeah, we've talked about that a little bit internally. We've talked about it a little bit with this project. I think visiting the line of sight and making sure that what they're proposing is adequate is probably the first step, outside of physically going out and clearing the brush and making it so that people can see. Getting that right of way dedicated on both sides of the street and not just on that that southwest corner, but even on that northeast corner, kind of opposite. That gentleman, like I said, has been open. We haven't taken any permanent action in that conversation, but we have definitely had the conversation. So, and then just really deciding, sitting down as a staff, looking at it from an engineering perspective, looking at it from a traffic perspective, what is the best and safest? Is it putting in a stop sign? I don't know. Is it enough just to have a better line of sight and clearing the vegetation and improving the actual street? It might be. It would be significant improvement. Adding sidewalks and walking paths would certainly make it better. But at this point, we're not that far in the conversation for actual what is the best improvement for that corner and what are we going to do?
Okay.
There's not a lot of brush that's there now. The power company has come along. It seems like almost every year they come and take more trees and limbs down off of 126th, making that more open. And then the greenery that's along Harvard is far enough away from the road that, and it's not super thick that you can still see traffic that's going up there. So one of my concerns is even if they cut a wedge off of there, their sighting is still going to be distorted, because if you're going to have fences, which I assume you're going to have fences along this whole area, they're not going to be able to see what's coming along because of the fences that are going to be blocking it even more. It would probably be safer to knock out those three houses, to leave it open, in my opinion, to take off those 3/4 lots and leave it open and make it more of a greenery place so people can at least see.
I would definitely have to rely upon engineering staff for traffic analysis, or you can make a recommendation that there is a traffic study done in that area. That can be part of your recommendation if that is.
Well, I know that they've done traffic counts before, a number of times before Fraser Meadows went in there. They've had the little thing that you drive over and it counts the traffic. It's been down there. It's been down there a couple of years in the past 5 years. So I know that someone has to have an idea of what traffic is going through there now, and all the housing developments that are being built south of 131st on Harvard on the way to the Bixby School. The housing has increased so much down there, so that's brought more traffic coming up Harvard to go into Jenks, because you can't go from 131st Street all the way to Highway 75, so they have to come up to 121st Street or down to 151st Street. So it's just going to bring more traffic down to that area.
I did pull up the INCOG ADT estimates. So they use GPS data, and I think this is I apologize, I can't tell you. I think it's 2019 or 2000. It's probably 2020, because it shows Fraser Meadows being cleared. So at the data that I can see, actually I can probably share my screen. That way you can all see what I'm looking at. Okay, can you all see this? So this is Fraser Meadows here, and the project we're talking about is right here. So this is the traffic data that INCOG has provided. So 1,500, I believe this is a day, and 2,861. And then when you get over this far, it gets up to 4,300. And I can zoom out a little bit. I don't know if we can still see it. Yeah, we can still see it. So now you can see over here, I believe this is Providence Hills, 2,600. And then the closer you get towards Glenpool, of course, over here you have 6,000 and 9,000. So for me, I can read the numbers. If you go down 3,000 here, 3,800 here. I just don't know how to analyze it and then tell you what you need to do on that corner, if you know what I'm saying.
It's a lot of traffic for a two-lane road that has no shoulders.
Yeah. So you're getting at least 1,500 coming through here, and then they don't show anything else around there.
Okay, then, unless we had more on that, I don't mean to cut anyone off. I had a question, just kind of what is this? What is our purview? Like, what can we do? It is a little bit out of character, as Carol, you noted, with the neighborhood to the north and northeast. On one hand, it's sort of like you have to buy your view. On the other hand, I think it's, as I understand it, within our discretion to decide if something's appropriate for development or not. So I guess, Marseille, my question is, like, I'm not saying this is what I think, but could we decide that this development is out of character for the neighborhood and it needs to be something less dense? Well,
The comprehensive plan supports the project that they are bringing to you. And because of that, I can support it, because I know so when we sat down and adopted the comprehensive plan, that whole area where Fraser Meadows is, the acreage, the 80 acres to the west, all of that is medium intensity.
mm-hmm.
It all matches. So it's all RS3, RS2 is what was recommended by Housel Levine. The immediately north of there is the RS1, so that is the larger lots. And we don't have the zoning code set that tells us what density matches that medium intensity. But I'm going to guess that something similar to this product is what they were recommending.
Okay. Well, I'm not resting on any of that. That's helpful, but I do. You know me, apparently I'm Mr. Public Safety, but I want to get the streets right before we approve a new development and not cause more problems for years to come. So let me hear from the rest of the commission, but I want to make sure we fully nail down that corner, and it is a bad corner.
So again, Marseille, on the this is John again, on the comp plan, that is RS3 or RS2.
Well, they didn't, when they finalized the comprehensive plan, they didn't match it to our current code.
Okay.
So I'm going out on a limb and saying that density is what that equals. So I'm going to say yes, RS2 or RS3.
and again, where this comes into play on the density then is going back on the setbacks on the rear yards and the side yards. Because if we look at the RS2, between RS2 and RS3, the rear is 25 to 20, and then again on the side yards is 10 to 10, and then I'm going back to my previous issue on the side yards of nothing else we've got has 5 and 5, and I just don't recall us approving anything previously with 5 and 5. And I'm open if you guys feel that's too restrictive. Then I can back down. It just seems too crowded, which means Mr. Bell might lose more than 3 homes if we say no. If it's too dense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we've ever had a housing development where it's been only 5 feet between 2 houses.
Oh, I think they're all over the place. Sorry, this is Scott. We've approved them all over the place.
Really?
5 and 5 on each side.
Yeah.
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 I can think of some. Yeah, you're more familiar, Scott. Yeah, there are some. Yeah.
My first house that I bought in South Creek, all those are 5 and 5.
Yeah.
North of 121st between Elm and Elwood.
Yeah. The question is though, how long ago was that? How long was that development done? I'm just kind of thinking
20
back
years.
to what. Yeah. So I guess the question is what's been our standard over the last 10 years, or from the last comprehensive plan and the last update to the building code?
Well, in the last 10 years, the market is driven for a larger size home, which seem to require a bigger lot and bigger side yard setbacks. It's kind of been market driven, in my opinion.
also, I don't think we're just ratcheting up or down, based on what we've done before. I think we have to look at each development alone. I mean, there are guidelines, but we don't have to follow what was done in the past.
Correct.
Which is, again, going back to some of the guidelines that we put into place on how we wanted to do things in Jenks. There's a lot of communities that don't require curb streets and sidewalks, and those things deal with the setback on the front of the house. So it's really a question of if we were putting our name on this development or on the city, would we want the houses to be this close in the PUD?
I don't know that that's up to us. Like I say, I think it's market driven. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on it. It's what the developer wants to do. If people are going to buy them, then it's market driven.
Well, the market's driving it right now because there's not a lot of inventory available.
Right. So they're going to buy anything they can. Everything goes fast.
But then again, that comes into buyer's remorse 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're talking about
that's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
right. When you're thinking about side yards, I know that there are a lot of people who are looking at it from a planning perspective and really understanding the potential heartburn that the owner could have in the future, or the city when you do have to go in and do infrastructure improvements or something. But it's extremely common in all over the country, and even, I mean, you've traveled internationally. If you go to New York or someplace else, there is a shared wall between almost all the houses in the very dense urban areas. So I think that it's not always everybody's favorite thing, but certainly, and it's a risk. If there does have to be something done, then yes, there's a risk. But if there's not a utility easement down through there, generally speaking, there's a utility. If there's going to be a utility in there, they're going to put an easement, and it's going to be a wider separation at that lot.
Or again, when they want to put the pool in the back, and then they have to encroach upon their neighbor's property to get the backhoe in there to put the pool in. It's a question of what standard do we want to apply? Is it a good practice to limit it on both sides like that? When we look at on page 84, you've got both an RS2 and RS3. You've got 10 feet on one side. So we've made it narrower.
I think we're also going to see, sorry, Commissioner Randolph, go ahead.
Oh, just real briefly, for what it's worth, I've been talking to a lot of people lately with the recent city council run, and, it seems like I never heard the comment that people want denser housing. It's always more of, let's not make it too dense, or maybe something in between. So I don't think the citizens of Jenks are looking to go down, on the side yards. Now that I'm not speaking to kind of what's our responsibility as a city to provide housing generally, and that's not really our job. But I just don't see anyone clamoring for a denser setup, really. At least
the other place that this is impacted too is up on livability space. So again, we've got smaller livability space than we would have for RS3.
Right. My question also is this really an RS2 or is it an RS3? It seems like it's closer to an RS3 guideline.
I think you're correct. It is closer to an RS3.
Yeah. And at a much more restrictive level than we even have for the RS3 standard.
I fully request permission to talk when you guys are ready to ask me.
Are we ready to listen to Mr. Bell?
Well, I have one more question, and forgive me if it had been covered.
It's
It's
okay.
actually It's actually about the reserve off Harvard. So on the, and Marseille, you may know the answer to the question, and maybe Mr. Bell as well. The intention of that reserve, I assume, is for road frontage aesthetics, or does it have another purpose?
Which page or can you tell me which exhibit or page?
86, Exhibit B.
I actually put the reserve in there, and there's a reason.
Okay. Yep. What?
Oh, sorry, I finally found it.
Sorry, I should be more clear when I start talking. I'll blame being online for sure.
Well, I'll be honest, mine's so small I can't read.
I blew up the PDF here, and I can see it. My question is that reserve. What's its intention? Why does it stop where it stops at each extension? Just tell me more about it. Why doesn't it extend the entire length of the development? I guess is kind of my question. I'm sure there's some good answers.
I'll let Robert answer it because I'm having a hard time actually seeing the document.
Oh, page 99 might be a little more helpful. Exhibit C.
Thank you. That's much clearer.
Okay, so I guess we can let Mr. Bell answer some of these questions. Is that everyone's questions? We can let Mr. Bell respond to our concerns. Robert?
Chairman, members of the commission, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. To answer the side yard setback issue, that is the Jenks standard. It is in every development in the city of Jenks unless it's an RS1 zoning. Wakefield, Yorktown, Churchill, Beckett Ridge, Fox Run, all of them are 5 and 5. That has been the standard. That's what we've approved, and that's a 10-foot separation between the houses. Just to let you know, what I heard what was wrong was we hadn't approved any, and I'm saying we hardly approve anything else. And that's been that way for the last 20 years. And that started with the city recognizing that they needed development and housing in the area in the promotion of housing back in 1996 to bring housing and builders over into the city. And the PUDs were started, and at that time, all the developments, if they were greater than RS1 or less than RS1 in zoning, then almost all requested a 5 and 5 yard setback because that helps the developer get the yield up, and especially with the value of the land in Jenks. So just to be said, that's the standard. There's a lot of talk here about RS2, RS3, and RS1, and I think that we're missing the crust of this property and what the issue is on this property, and that is that area. If you look at the air photo and the application that I submitted, that area in the middle of this development has a lot of large trees and foliage in the middle, and we think that's the amenity of this property. That's what makes this property valuable at that point, and so what we set out to do is how do we protect that area? you can see that's a large strip of land through a development that we've created. That's a reserve area, and I don't know the exact acres. It's greater than 5 at that point. The 3 ponds that you see wet, that area doesn't have a creek in it. That area is not wet at all. The developer is going above and beyond to create a series of ponds out there with waterfalls. And that means that he's got to create water to sustain that to keep that amenity up. So that'll be associated with a irrigation or a pumping situation to keep water in those 3 ponds as it comes through. And they're going to preserve that area with the large trees in that area. They'll trim them up, make it a park-like setting at that point, and make that the amenity of the subdivision. To save that area and to take 10 acres out of that development, then we take the situation is I keep hearing you saying RS3, RS2, but this is really a true cluster development. We're putting in 1.75 housing dwellings per acre. It's almost half-acre lots that you're requesting at that point. The only reason that we're not is the reason why they seem more compact than they seem, because that's what a PUD does, is allow the houses to be compacted in the area where the houses are, so you can have open space and you can have amenities at that point. A part of that area, we're going to have a pickleball court, and that's in the PUD. And so when you come down to, it's not just the size of the lots that dictate whether it's RS2 or RS3. It's the amount of area and the amount of dwellings per acre that's dictating all that. And in this case, this is actually greater than an RS2 zoning. This is between RS2 and RS1 because of the reserve area that we put together in there to save those trees. If you say, oh, you can't have that, then all that goes away. At that point, we can do away with the cluster, clear the land, and build the houses at that point. And so the amenity to the city, the reason to do the PUD is to save the aesthetics of land. And this is a perfect example of that at that point. So I'm going to speak towards the corner a little bit. I've been the planning director for the city of Jenks for 18 years, recognized that corner was a major issue, and that corner is a major problem, and nothing has been done. And this developer is looking to purchase this land. Instead of developing that corner, he has said, let's dedicate what we can to improve, let the city have the ability to improve that corner to the needs, and the city is looking at that. And that's what I heard Marseille say, was the city was looking at that, and they don't have an answer yet. But if we need to make that a little wider at that point, then we can make it a little wider. But right now, and there's foliage out there, and I agree that the utility companies have kept it somewhat clear, but it's not fully clear. And the fence line will stop at the property line that's in place, which will allow the city to make that an easier curve and do the expansion. Now 126 is a half section line road at that point. So it's not a section line road, and it's by code and by comprehensive plan, it's supposed to be 60 foot wide. And so, I mean, we've kept access off of that way. I mean, we've done what we can to improve that area. We haven't allowed any access to go in there. Even the lift station, we don't allow the lift station to get on there from 126. We also cut the corner back so the city has the ability to improve that area. If the city wanted more area in there, I think that's doable. I don't think that it improved it enough to take those 3 lots completely off. We may decrease the backyards of those lots, but that design, we've looked at other areas and other corners, and that far exceeds what's normal for that type of corner. So I think that'll work, and the city engineer will have the ability to improve Harvard and 126 with that design, which is the city, or which the developer is willing to give, because he recognizes that problem with that corner. As far as the reserve area, that comes in twofold. Along Harvard, if you remember the problem in Fraser Meadows of the One Oak line, and the fact that we had to decrease the building setback in the front yards to accommodate that. I kind of got into that subdivision after it was already started, and so that's a fixed action that was there because it was there. But this is what I consider a reasonable fixed action. Those lots are 120 foot deep, so therefore the developer is given another 35 feet on the outside of that for a reserve area. So that means that reserve, the reason why that reserve area is that the west property line of that reserve is the west line of the One Oaks easement at that point, and we took it completely out of the residential lots and put it in the reserve area in the right of way at that point, and that's the purpose of that. I would note that the new comprehensive plan, which was just passed, and the studies that were done, identified this property as suburban residential. And suburban residential supports up to an RS3 zoning. I mean, they could actually do not really a multifamily, but even a heavier density than what. But as I said, don't forget this development that you're looking at, because of that reserve area and because of trying to preserve the trees in that area and doing the waterfalls and the wet ponds. This is only one house, or this is 1.7 houses per acre, because it's a 32 acre piece of property and it's only 109 lots. Also, you asked why it stops, where it stops to the south. Those parcels that face Fraser Meadows will be developed as phase 3 of Fraser Meadows at that point. So that's the same design and the same setup from the development to the south. The platted area is that line or every lot that fronts the streets of Fraser Falls. I think it's worthy to note. There's several things that this property does to improve the city's infrastructure standpoint. I've listed those in the amendment or in the PUD. One, it reduces the lift station in the area from 2 back to 1 the way it was designed, and that is extremely important. Also, we bring a 12-inch line down South Harvard and connect to the 8-inch line in the subdivision to the north. I provided you a picture of the water plans. What that does is connect to water service areas, 2 different, out on 131st Street, there's a vault associated with the Tulsa water line. there's a water line that serves 121st all the way back to Elm Street, and that goes to the subdivision to the south, or to the north, excuse me. And what we're doing is by this development, we're allowing the connection of those two water systems and loop two water systems on the east side of Jenks as they are on the west side of Jenks. And that will be very supportive and very helpful. I think it's a benefit that, and I recognize the problem with the road. And I also recognize that the traffic counts at 2,000 or 2,500 or 3,000 a day, and it's not that high at that corner. It's about 1,500.
Don't believe it.
but even if let's call it 3,000 a day, the ability to improve that area doesn't happen until that right of way is dedicated. And we're talking about a developer that goes, you know what, I'm not going to plan anything in that area because I know that area needs to be improved. And I know that they need that land to improve that, so I'm going to give them that land. And by doing this development, the improvement is we clear the trees out to help improve the visibility. But now the city has the choice to make the necessary improvements on the ground, because now they have the land because the developer's given it to them. So another benefit at that point. So in summary, 5 and 5 is normal. The reason for 5 and 5 is because this is a true cluster development. We've clustered these lots north and south of a reserve area, and we've taken that reserve area out of the development section and tried to preserve some of the trees and the characters of the existing land that is out there. The development is a true RS2 type development. Actually, it's between RS2 and RS1, but it doesn't comply with an RS1 standard. And that is by the amount of housing per acre.
Robert, Mr.
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
I'm going to have to interrupt you on that because it is not accurate if you're just looking at the standards, all the standards. I understand what you're saying about green area, but when it comes to all the standards that currently exist in the code, that is not accurate, and it is not an accurate argument. It is not between an RS1 and an RS2. It is less than an RS3. I would be happy to show you what has been recommended by Housel Levine and the new UDO based on what is built. And this does support what Commissioner West said and what Mr. Bell has said. And if you'll remember, they did the diagnostic report where they actually went in and looked at PUDs and the underlying zoning, and based on what has been approved by Planning Commission and Council, it is far smaller lots, far smaller land area, etc. But I'd be happy to show you what has been recommended. You all have received it already, but if you want to take a look at it at this time, I would be happy to. But to argue that it's an RS1 or an RS2 is not a valid argument. And
I would take that argument off the table and just make a comment that it's 1.75 dwelling units per acre.
Only because you've got a lot of green space that's there. Wait, the houses are still on top of each other, Robert. We've heard your point. Thank you. We need to cut the time down a little bit. We've let you go on.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Would the Planning Commission be interested in seeing the proposed standards? It's not relevant tonight in the sense that it's not part of our code, but it will show you where the House of Levine is recommending we go.
I think from my standpoint, if we are going to adopt a UDO that is much more liberal, that'd be something that I would want to look at. I think I've kind of stated my position on this in the past. We've actually had this discussion. Sorry, let me adjust my mic. We've actually had this discussion many times previously, and I always go back to when I first started on this, going back to our duties and responsibilities, because our responsibility is to prevent overcrowding of land and undue encroachment, to provide development for the community in accordance with a comprehensive plan. There's nothing within the duties and responsibilities of the Planning Commission that are designed to ensure the greatest economic return for developers. While we are supposed to encourage development, removing all the standards in order to maximize what someone can pull out of a development project is not within our purview or within our scope. We are supposed to ensure that developments are done for the best interest of the community. So if we want to look at the proposed UDO tonight, I'd be in favor of that if the other commissioners wanted to hear that and take that into consideration.
Anyone want to see it? I think your
If you've
points
got
are
it
very
handy,
well
you can
brought
pick-
up, John. Those are
Yeah.
very good points, but it takes us back to our basics when we first signed up for this position.
I'd be curious to see it. I have one kind of brief thing to add, not to prolong this anymore, but the comprehensive plan had this slide. I'm looking at it. It says page 37 at the bottom, where they had sort of this example of conventional sprawl versus conservation development. Now here we're not really doing conservation, but there is sort of this feature in the middle. And on the second option, the homes are denser, but you sort of have these nature amenities around. But this is the old argument of amenities versus just kind of strict zoning code lots. And I do like the amenities, but I don't know, 5 and 5 just seems a little tight to me still, but.
I'll say that the new code requires, if it were adopted as it is written, it would require 15 minimum, 5 and 10.
I also don't know
Even
if it's.
though it does allow for 45.
It's not like this is the only option. I mean, we could have amenities with a bigger side yard setback. I mean, it would require a different plan and fewer homes. I mean, obviously the lots would be more expensive, but it's not just like this is the only option.
Agreed. Anyone else?
Leon, you're pretty quiet. You got some miles under your belt on this.
I want to refresh. I want to look at the UDO information on this. I'm kind of torn though, because I don't want to start doing things to developers to limit what they bring forward if they know they have a product that's going to sell. I'm not a fan of this development. I wouldn't spend that kind of money to be that type, but there are people who will. I'm just not one of them.
Right. Well, also, I think nowadays that the normal price for a home seems to be starting around 300,000. So I don't think it's for anything extra special.
I put on your screen. You can see what's on the. Can you see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I highlighted the RS3 based on what has been approved. Commissioner West and Mr. Bell are correct. What we've approved a lot, and what you see is an RS3 in Jenks is really on average a 5,000 square foot lot with a 45-foot lot width.
Wow.
And RS2 in Jenks is based on the underlying zoning and the PUDs that were approved with it. And RS2 is really a 55-foot lot. But in all of these and in the recommendation, they're saying that a 15-foot side yard is recommended, like 10 and 5. It says no interior side yard should be less than 5 feet. So you could have 10 on one and 5 on the other. But that's what's recommended moving forward.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Because that actually represents better what is on the ground in the city of Jenks.
Okay. Any more discussion on this item? We're ready for a motion.
Chairman Menden, I want to talk about the traffic in the corner just for a second, if I can.
Sure.
That I've been here a long time, and that intersection is nothing more than a two-way stop, essentially, without stop signs. The amount of traffic that goes through there, in my opinion, is minimal when you take a look at, say, 121st and Elwood, which has tens of thousands of more cars going through there. There's a four-way stop with no curbs, no gutters, no, it's very similar. That's a pretty rural two-lane road through there. But you mentioned earlier that there were semis coming through there. I've never seen a semi come through there. And granted, I don't live out there. I don't drive it every day, but I drive it weekly probably. And that's probably a semi driver from the toilet paper factory that got lost.
The Kimberly Park drivers get lost and they come down this way.
Yeah, and I understand that. That happens occasionally. I liked Marseille's conjecture earlier that maybe stop signs. People hit that if you're familiar with it like we are, you know what we're doing out there. If people aren't familiar with it, they slow down to 25, and you can't make a 90-degree turn at 25. And so I think stop signs would be a great idea out there, just to alert people that this is somewhere where you need to go down to 5 miles an hour, if not a complete stop. But the amount of traffic is not that great. It's a good road. It just has a 90-degree turn with no stop signs.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on that.
Okay. I invite you to come walk with me some morning and watch all the traffic speed around that corner and the drunks at night.
Well, I know that, and I understand that you have a personal interest in it because you walk it multiple times daily. But you threw out the number earlier that this would add 400 cars going through there every day. And I cut that down from 24 hours because most people don't drive from, all day long or all night long. So divide that by 12, you get one extra car every 2 minutes through there with 400 extra. So, but I agree. It's not safe if you are not familiar with it, and not everybody's familiar with it.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, can I hear a motion?
One last comment, if I can. I really like the amenities with this and the thought that's put into it. It just seems a little dense to me, and I don't think it reflects what people in Jenks really want for the city right now. So that's just my perception.
So with respect to a motion, is it possible to offer a motion with an amendment to the minimum widths?
Are you asking me or are you asking them?
Either.
What was the question?
Yeah, well, if you were waiting for a motion, because I think, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I know I'm struggling with it, and I'm inclined not to support it, but I would be open to supporting it with an amendment to the width, with this setback on the lots. If we were consistent, I think that would harmonize better. Cutting the lots, changing the lot sizes with the setbacks.
You can make that part of your motion, yes.
John, if you
You
change
can
the
make
width
that
of
part
that, the entire project changes. There's no approving it with adding 5 feet to each lot. I mean, that totally changes the entire thing.
Yeah, I realize that.
Does it change the entire project, or does it change the size of the width of the house? It should just change the width of the house.
It would just change the width of the house. That is correct.
Yeah, but they probably want to redo
changes
the project.
Which changes the square footage of the lot, which changes the square footage of the house, which changes all
the livable
the money,
space
all the
on the
dollars.
houses is, the livable spaces on the houses is less than the RS3 right now as well.
Yeah, they have to make these numbers work, the developer, and that would not work.
So anyone want to try it, make a hit at a motion, supporting, denying it, making a change? We need to hear something.
The way I see it, if we make a change, in essence, what we're saying is that we just don't approve the development. Because any modifications and changes, I agree with Scott, is going to take the development off the table.
Okay, then I'll make a motion that we table this item and ask the developer to come back with an amendment to change the setbacks.
There's a motion.
I'll second it.
Ask clarification, Commissioner Menden and Commissioner Brown, are you asking to table it to the next meeting or table it until they choose to bring it back?
I would say table it until they choose to bring it back.
Why not make a motion to deny it then?
We could very well do that. I mean, that is an option.
There is a motion.
There's
a motion in a second. You do have to take action.
There is a motion and a second. And let me give a clarification to the question then. If we deny it, then they can appeal the council and it pushes this issue to city council. Whereas if we approve a motion to table it, then that would require them to bring it back before they take it to council for an appeal. At least that would be what do you think? Would that be correct, David?
I think so. It seems like our job is to work it out and then present what we think is the right thing to council, not just flip rejected projects, at least as far as I understand it. So I'd be in favor of tabling it and asking for an amended,
Well, there is a motion and a second on the floor.
Well, before we do this, let me ask this question, because this is where I'm not clear. Is this discussion based on personal preference or whether or not this is allowed?
Agreed.
That's where I'm struggling right now.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Can you explain what do you mean by what is allowed?
Well, I'm not a fan of tight lots. you know, big houses with no yard spaces in between them. But there are people who are fans of that and like that. I'm just not one of them. That's my personal preference. But do our zoning, our PUD practices that we just looked at allow this type of development to take place if this developer feels that they can sell these units and that they have a market for these units? Then I'm going to go with the developer, because my personal preference in terms of lot sizes doesn't, in my opinion, matter. Is a matter of, are they in violation of something, or are they acting within their rights and they feel they can sell this product? Because you know, I just see too many communities that can't get housing developments off the ground, and Jenks is not one of them. And so there's a variety of people who have different tastes. This is just not my taste, but if he has the market and can support this, then so be it.
I think I have an answer for that if I can.
Go ahead.
Since it's not a regular zoning RS2 or 3, for example, guideline, but a PUD, which is sort of a special package product that you can change these standard requirements in exchange for some amenities. I mean, we could look at that package and say, no, it's not really quite what we think. And that seems to be what I'm hearing, you know. So if you want to call that personal preference, you know,
Yeah.
sure, but we're within our rights to do that, to say not quite. So
I don't see lot sizes as anonymity. I don't have a problem with the ponds, the keeping of the trees, and that. I think that's going to be pretty cool. But when we start talking about the lot sizes, if we've approved something like this before, I don't know how we cannot approve it now.
This is John again, which is why I've raised this in the past. And Commissioner Randolph is correct. With a PUD, we've got flexibility as to what we approve. But if we look at our standards for RS2, RS3, this would be less than RS3. And if we look at the language for the proposed UDO, this would be less than what would be proposed with an RS3 density for the UDO. So the question then comes back to our duties and responsibilities. Does this properly harmonize with the area being developed? So would this PUD be harmonious to the rest of the developments in the area, or what we want as development standards?
Okay.
So there's a motion and a second, and I can prepare a wave file with the sound of taps if you guys would like.
So remind me, what was the motion exactly?
Motion was to table it with the instructions for the developer to bring back a proposal at such point in time that they can offer something else for us to look at.
Okay.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Absolutely not.
Leon Davis,
No.
Jeffrey Byer,
No.
Carol Minden.
Yes. So what happens now, Marseille?
That fails. This is Scott.
It's
I'll make a
tie, the
motion to approve.
fails. Yeah.
I
3 to
appreciate
3.
you speaking your mind,
Motion
Scott.
failed. You made a motion to approve? Is that
Yes,
what you
ma'am.
said?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll second it.
David Randolph,
No.
John Brown,
No.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer, You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Carol Minden.
No.
Do we have a third motion? I would if you basically have to get a consensus.
Well, if we don't have if we don't have a majority, it fails.
But the motion was to approve, so the motion to approve failed, so you have to have a motion to deny.
We're going to come up with the same results because we're split.
Yep.
They can't pass, so it's essentially a denial, right?
Can't pass it without a majority. So basically, it's left to the developer can bring it before council if they want to appeal the decision. My apologies to the council. Their first meeting.
You know, there's one more option. Do we want to wait until next month when we've got 7, hopefully?
That was basically the vote, the first vote to table to the next meeting, which failed.
It was a motion to table with modifications.
Correct.
So it wasn't a
Correct.
motion to reconsider and reevaluate.
That is correct.
To buy time. So I would make a motion. Well, I've not been on the commission enough to understand some of those ins and outs, but I think I'll make a comment. Allowing more time, I think, to understand some of the information that's been discussed would be helpful to me.
Yeah. I think I need some more time.
Is there a third motion?
So would that be a motion to table it without any
Yes.
additional changes? So I'll make a motion to table JZ 21 PUD 127 Fraser Falls.
I second that motion.
And just for clarification in my notes here, that was to table to the next planning commission meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
No.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Okay, motion is tabled till the next meeting. Any other business, Marseille?
Well, at the next meeting, we were going to have our UDO conversation, but understanding how long this item has taken, I will let you all tell me if you want to have that UDO conversation next month or not. Because I want Jackie and House of Levine to have plenty of time to explain and answer your questions, and I don't want you all to be fatigued to the point that you can't hear what they're saying. So with a show of hands, do you want to have the UDO hearing next month at the May Planning Commission?
So can I ask what's the pipeline of other things coming through for next month's meeting? Do you have a sense of that yet?
Yes, our deadline has passed. We have Brandon, 2 minor amendments. No, 2 laws.
No, 2 TUPs.
2 TUPs for
One lot
fireworks.
split. one plat that was originally going to be on tonight, and then now
Yeah.
this tabled item.
Seems like a lot. I don't know.
It does. I think my only reservations too is we're looking at the UDO and we've got an issue here. I don't think I can recall us actually seeing a split like this before on another issue since I've been on, where we couldn't even get something carried over with the table. Knowing that our point with the UDO is to come up with this consistent standard, I think this really plays into this particular issue. Because we don't want to pass a UDO and then make one of our first decisions to come around and then revise that new standard.
I do like getting things done all at once in a month.
Yeah, so do I.
Even if it's one long meeting.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So keep it on the May agenda.
Okay, it looks that way.
Is there, okay. Is there any information, you all have everything, I think at this point. Did I give you the Excel spreadsheets?
I haven't opened the email yet. Are we just, is it from the email that you sent like the other day?
Yes, so you have the articles 1 through 5, and I cannot remember if you have the Excel spreadsheets, but if you, I'll check. And then I also have sent you all a Doodle poll where you can sign up for office hours to talk with me personally about the UDO. And if you have questions, it's mostly lunchtimes. I did schedule maybe one evening and one morning. But I want to be available. And if none of those times work for you and you really have some questions, please feel free to call me. I'll be happy to go with you. It's not a big deal at all. I look forward to going over it. That was my biggest thing. Starting next month, we're going to, I talked to Chairman Minden and she is in agreement with staff recommendation. I didn't really ask everybody's opinion. I only asked hers. But lot splits and plats, we're going to create a consent agenda like we do at City Council, and lot splits and plats will go in consent. So we won't be having those conversations unless you sincerely have some questions, and then you're always welcome to pull those from consent and have a conversation. But in the sake of time and knowing that lot splits and plats are very technical documents, generally speaking, you've already approved the zoning on it, et cetera, or the planned unit development. So those will just go straight on consent. If you have a question, feel free to pull it off. But we'll start that in May. And then we also have the reappointment of a couple of you. I'll be reaching out with that information and confirming if you are interested in serving still.
I saw that look.
Even Commissioner Byer.
We're getting the dog to weigh in here.
Oh, so I think that's it.
I like the idea of a consent agenda. Let me, Marcy, I just checked the email. We do have articles 1 through 5, but I'm not seeing a spreadsheet.
Okay, I'll send those out tomorrow. I think I wanted to look over them one more time. There was some information. The UDO never made any. The UDO committee never made any comments on it, and staff's looked over it a couple of times. And I think I just wanted to make sure I was comfortable with it. But you will understand when you start looking at it. If you actually do, like after a while, you just like numb. You can't do it anymore. Cannot read another line of this. Okay. So thank you all. I appreciate it. And we'll have everything on the meeting next May.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.